Welcome to the Greg Dwyer Radio Show on Building Fortunes Radio with your host, motivational speaker Greg Dwyer. Be sure to check out Greg at www.gregdwyer.com. That's www.gregdwyer.com. Now on to our show. Take it away, Greg.
Okay, I'm not really sure when you're listening to this broadcast, but here we are in March, and I can't believe this. I just wrapped my mind around the fact that we are the first quarter almost over, March 2025. Are you focused? Are you doing what you need to do in your personal life, in your business life? And here's the million-dollar question. Do you have balance in your life? Or do you feel burnt out? My guest today is Marcy Renken. We're going to talk about these concepts, these ideas, and how to have a better life and a better professional life. Marcy, thanks for being on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me, Greg. I'm excited to be here.
So I know everybody has a story. I know you do counseling and coaching and you do speaking, and your career is just doing so well right now. How did you get into this? What got you involved? What was the backstory here?
Well, Greg, I had a lot of kids. I'm trying to find a way to escape from my children. But seriously, I've had the last 20 years I have been working as well as raising a family. So figuring out how to balance that chaos has been at the core of me developing who I am today, which is, an expert in burnout, because I've been there. And that is what has really driven me. There have been lots of things that have happened along the way that set me back or, took me down, led me down a path that I did not like, into some darkness. And in finding my way through that, I discovered that these are not challenging things to do, but a lot of people don't realize how simple it can be to make positive changes that impact the entirety of their life in a really positive way.
I know people who are in real estate, some of my best friends, closest friends, and I've looked at your website, and I know that you've been a professional in the real estate industry. I've been in sales. Real estate is about relationships, but I also know that a lot of realtors who are doing really well and killing it out there, they don't have the balance. Like, they're glued to the phone. They're constantly looking at the emails. They're just all over the place. And I think your website said you did this for 15 years. Is that correct?
Yes, I have been. Well, I've been cumulatively in sales for 15 years. 12 of those years were actively in real estate. And exactly to your point, those first couple of years in real estate, when I was brown-eyed and bushy-tailed, ready to just do everything I could do to make that first sale, those first few sales, I was working 60 to 80 hours a week. Like you said, I was glued to my phone. I had no work-life balance at all. I was running and jumping at every opportunity, or so I thought, that could get me, results. And at the end of that first couple of years, I was burnt out. Not only was I pregnant, I was burnt out, and I didn't want to do it anymore. I just stopped because I couldn't figure out in that moment that there was an easy way to get work-life balance. So that was like early on was a way for me to realize, oh shoot, this is important, because it's literally like killing me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, what would it profit you to make millions of dollars and your family goes down the tube or your health goes down the tube? And I don't think that people think about this until it happens. They don't think about, you're probably familiar with the wheel of life. You've probably seen this before, where you draw a wheel and then you make it into like pizza slices, and you look at your finances and your relationships. Yeah. I think most people are off balance because they tend to focus on things that they're really good at, and then they don't focus on other things like, I don't know, paying their taxes on April 15th, or maybe getting their health in line, or whatever it is, right?
Yeah. Get started on your taxes right now. You've only got a month left. if you're listening.
Well, I got mine in, and I'm doing my part. So how do you help people? I mean, what is your secret sauce? What is your controlling idea? What is the one thing that, or maybe there's more than one thing, but what is it? Is it focus? Is it discipline? What exactly do you bring to the table here on this?
Well, what is interesting is it's really not one thing that will help you combat burnout or disengagement. It's a variety of things, but it's not necessarily complicated things. What I have found is that the number one thing you can do, which everything else falls under the umbrella in, is to have a purpose or a mission. And I don't mean like, my family is going to, go on vacation this summer to Disney. I mean, what do you really want out of your life? And if you can write down a statement like that, what you really want out of your life, then you're going to find that every decision, every action, every time you invest in yourself, whether it's personal development, professional development, you're going to start seeing that vision become a reality. You also are able to limit those distractions that aren't helping you in that vision or that mission. So really it's about establishing that vision, which helps you to establish those very priorities in that, wheel of life that you were just talking about.
Yeah, and it's important to say no to things, because I think the more successful you become or the more focused you become, you have to say no to certain things. Now, I'm glad you said yes to this podcast, but I get it. You can't do everything. I've had people in my seminars and my workshops say, I'm 50 years old, I'm running out of time, I only have 30 years, I want to do everything. And I always say to folks, you have to focus on what is truly important to you. Yes. And you have to have that hierarchy really clear, because there's like news, media, there's so much coming at us all the time, and it's in our hands, it's on the cell phone, that we are distracted. Let's go back to this idea of being focused on what a person wants. How do they get clear on that, Marcy?
Well, when I speak with people, I try to get an idea of the struggles and challenges they're facing. And then we kind of think about and reflect on maybe challenges they've overcome and how those very things that they've overcome can help drive how they get through this next challenge. But truly by focusing in on what the vision is, which means sitting down and thinking about, what do I want to accomplish in my life? What do I want my legacy to be? What do I want to leave behind for my children or my friends or my family or my organization? What are those things that I can do to make a positive impact on the world around me? It's not complicated. It really isn't. It's simple. And there are all kinds of strategies to get that done. There's thinking about work-life balance and some different strategies like making sure you spend 30 minutes a day being active, or making a list of 3 things you want to do each day to get accomplished. And don't touch anything else until you get those 3 things done. And those are just a couple of examples on how we can kind of focus in on doing all of these things to have those outcomes that are beyond what we had imagined possible.
You made me think of a quote, and I just heard of this quote last week, so this is new to my thinking. It was Blaise Pascal who said, "The reason why we have so many problems in the world today is because people cannot sit quietly and be isolated in silence." And so I kind of dug. I liked it. I said, well, what's he saying here? And this was said many years ago. I mean, it's not like this guy's a contemporary of our age. He said that there is so many distractions out there going here and there. His lifetime was between 1926 and 1623 and 1662. So this is an old dude. He's been in the ground for a while. But anyway, to make a long story short, he was talking about the fact that people are just all over the place. And to ask a person to sit down and to be quiet, not New Year's Eve resolutions, right? Not that thing, but really getting clear of my identity and who I am. So, so do you have success with this? Do people do this?
Yes, absolutely. I was actually thinking about what you were just saying too, and I'm sure some of the listeners could either think of a time maybe when they've done this at a conference or a retreat where they just sat down and contemplated and wrote down, kind of the things that they're hoping to gain out of life. I actually have a time, it's more spiritual, but it's an hour every single week that I sit in silence And sometimes it might be prayerful, and sometimes I'll take my notebook and I'll just jot down stuff and just kind of dissect what's going on in my brain. But you're right. Taking that hour, that gentleman you were quoting, I don't recall his name, but he had the same 24 hours in a day that we have. We have control over our time. A lot of times I hear people complain that I'm working with, and they will talk about how they're burnt out or they're disengaged or they just this corporate structure is just against them. And I'm looking at them saying, you have control over how you respond to this. And what if you started making positive change in yourself and then started challenging other people to do the same? And then you're going to come out and everyone's going to benefit from that. I don't know if that even answered your question, but that's where I'm going with it.
Yeah, no, it does. And I want to play devil's advocate. And, of course, we haven't rehearsed this. There's no notes in front of me, and you don't have any notes as well. But, I've been to seminars where we have talked and focused on these things. And I've had people from the stage say, when you start getting clear about this stuff, things change. People leave people, they get divorced, people leave jobs, like in other words, they have an aha moment, and in the process of that aha, it could be a 3-day seminar, a weekend seminar, a couple years later, they change. Now, if you're going to a group, let's say it's IBM, or you're going to, a big company like Staples, and you're speaking and you're talking about finding your passion and being congruent and avoiding distractions, there has to be a few folks in the audience that are like, what? I really want to be an artist. I don't know what I'm doing here. They want to leave, you know what I mean?
Right. I don't want to be here. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So have you experienced that, or have you thought that through? Have you, had that happen? And I apologize if this is too invasive, but it just crossed my mind, and I thought we would address it.
Well, to be honest, when I was young, I wanted to be a professional, a famous trumpet player. And I have a musical background, and I am technically paid as a trumpet player here and there. So it has kind of come true. But what I realized is that what I was really seeking was not to be on a stage in front of people for people to applaud me. What I was seeking was to make an impact. And sometimes that person that might be sitting in the audience that's thinking, gosh, I want to make an impact through my art, not through this corporate job or through this whatever it is that they're doing, but they can do that in a different way than maybe they thought. Maybe their creative talents can be used in something that's going on within the organization itself, which is what I've kind of discovered. I had a client a year ago that I was meeting with, and she was telling me about these struggles that she was facing at her job or her place of employment. She's actually a real estate agent, and I started asking her questions. I didn't tell her what she needed to do. I asked her questions. She was able to discover herself that she was just in an unhealthy environment. That doesn't mean it's unhealthy for everyone, but for her it was. So by me kind of challenging her and pressing on her a little bit to just step out of her comfort zone, to make a change and make a choice that she does want something better, she came back a few months ago, and we were chatting. We recorded this little session, and she said, Marcy, you empowered me to 10 minutes of radical movement where I made a decision to move my place of employment to a totally different brokerage. And it was incredibly scary, and it changed my life. It made an impact on every single area of my life. Now, I'm not saying, to your listeners that everyone should just up and leave their company if they're having trouble in their job, but sometimes it does take a radical change. Sometimes it takes just a step. 10 minutes is not a long time to make a small change that will make a lifetime impact.
Right. And the upside, first of all, let me say this. I think you did great answering that question, because there was part of me that thought, this is a hardball question. But I think you answered it really honestly, and you did a great job with it. But the upside of it is, if a person gets connected to their passion, and they stay in their employment, and they stay in that brokerage, or they stay in that corporate job, they might be a lot more happier. And you know this. You know that people are happier. They perform better.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a whole philosophy or a school of thought that if you're not working in a place where your passion is then you're going to be miserable. And I have been challenging that ever since my undergraduate degree in economics, because I had this class, and not that I need to bring up like horrible names from the past or people might be offended politically, but I took a class on Marxism and just learning about the history of it. And in that class, the idea, the concept was if you're not performing or doing what you're passionate about at your job, you're going to be disgruntled, and then, the whole world's going to end. You're going to, overturn society, and there's going to be a revolution. And I don't know whether that would happen or not happen. It hasn't yet, to my knowledge. But what I have discovered is that if you're not pursuing your passion, like I'm a musician, I love to sing, I love to play trumpet. I don't have to do that full time in my job to still be able to do those things. I play in different music organizations. I give my artistic creativity to ministry work that I do and things I do outside of even my regular everyday speaking and involvement. So there are so many ways in our world, and even getting involved in the community or philanthropically, there are ways that you can use your gifts and talents that doesn't have to be married to your job, but that still gives you life and purpose beyond your job.
Wonderful. Yeah. Happy people, they produce more, and they enjoy their life. I'm a driven individual. I've always focused on the science of achievement and getting things done. But, as I'm in my 60s now, I'm thinking, I need to enjoy life, the art of fulfillment, understanding, hey, look at all these blessings that I have. We're going to take a quick commercial, but before we do that, how do we get a hold of you and your website, your commercial?
Well, my website is orchestratedperformance.com. And that may be a little bit complicated. I know it's 2 long words, but there's also something that your listeners may appreciate. I've created a 52 Weeks to Thrive, so 52weekstothrive.com. It's not a quick fix, but it's a whole year long of small videos, testimonials, and things that might just empower them to live an exceptional life.
Excellent. I'm going to sign up for that as soon as this is over. We'll take a quick commercial. I'm looking at the time. I think it's 30 seconds. We'll be right back.
You've been listening to the Greg Dwyer Radio Show, brought to you by motivational speaker Greg Dwyer on buildingfortunesradio.com. Do you wish you could sharpen your focus on what matters most to you and achieve more? Then you owe it to yourself to read Greg's ebook at gregdwyerebook.com. That's www.gregdwyerebook.com. Download it today and give it away. As always, we want to thank you for listening to the Greg Dwyer Radio Show on Building Fortunes Radio with motivational speaker Greg Dwyer. Now back to our show. Take it away, Greg.
Okay, we're talking to Marcy Renken. She's a consultant. She's a speaker, advocate for transformational leadership and team engagement. If you're not happy in life, you're not going to produce. It doesn't matter if you're in real estate, corporate job, or whatever you're doing. Marcy, let's talk about burnout. How many folks are either burnt out in society, I don't know if you know the stats, or they're just disengaged. They're not engaged in their work. Do you know?
Well, actually, in my research, I have learned that about 8 out of 10 people in the workplace are burnt out, and that's according to some Gallup polls just recently in the last year or so. And then 5 out of 10 people consider themselves disengaged. And I'm married to one of them at times.
Wow.
So it's kind of staggering. There's a lot that goes into that number, and this is self-reporting with a nationally known poll, and just to think about the challenges that people face in work, and for them to be willing to admit that's a lot.
Yeah, I am fortunate. Marcy, I remember being in high school, and I hated high school. My mom died when I was in high school. I was rebellious to begin with, and I saw the system. I didn't like the system, and I never liked the system from kindergarten up through 12th grade. And I remember them talking about the SATs, and I remember them talking about getting a job and going to be a lawyer or doctor. I specifically remember sitting in class saying, I'm not doing this. I'm an artist, and I want to have the freedom of my own calendar. I want to be able to do what I want to do when I want to do it. And I'm 62 years old. I haven't changed a bit. Where am I going with this? I think people need to have purpose, and they need to have a focus, because you only get one life. And a lot of times people will work for 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years or whatever it is, and get to retirement, and they only have, a decade to live after that? I mean, it's
right.
Sad.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, did I mention that I have 6 children, Greg?
Yes.
So the reason I bring that up, the reason I bring it up is because my oldest is applying to college right now, and he only wants to do art, so I can relate to you right now. But then I also have a 14-year-old son, and my 14-year-old son, he's a freshman in high school, finishing up his freshman year, and he is not at all interested in this system that we're talking about here. So it's very challenging, I think, at points in our life to realize that it's not just about fitting in the system and doing and conforming to all the ways your parents or the society tells you. You can do some of those things, but if you have a purpose as to why it makes sense to do those things, suddenly it starts to align a little bit better.
Yeah, I've seen those tests. I don't know if I went to a counselor one time. This is when I was in between and trying to figure myself out, and they sat me down and I took this test. I don't know how long it took, maybe an hour. And you fill out all of these things, and then you send it in, and then they pop out, well, you don't fit into being an automobile mechanic. You don't fit into being a lawyer.
Right.
But you know what? When it came to entrepreneurship, I was off the charts. I was way off the charts. Do you ever suggest those tools with your people when you work with them, or how do you get that assessment?
I love assessment tools. I think not everyone appreciates them. I really enjoy them because it not only are you answering questions and getting an idea of what can or what box you might fit in, but as you're doing the questions, you're thinking about possibilities. So this last week, my son, he's been working with a job coach. And in that part of that coaching, she had him sit down with her, and they were filling out this questionnaire. It sounds like within 10 minutes of working on this questionnaire, she realized that it was too much. It wasn't really something that interested him. And they ended up spending 30 to 45 minutes, but they went down to the ice cream shop. But they walked around talking about how he envisions the future. So sometimes, for some people, they might really like a personality quiz or a self-assessment or evaluation on what their skills might match up with. And sometimes talking to either a job coach or a consultant or a work-life coach is actually the best strategy because they'll be able to help you discover for yourself without, pre-canned questions and suggestions, what you're really meant and what you can really be capable of doing.
Wow. Well, you bring a lot of gifts to the table, not only in sales, but a family person. But I also want to thank you for your service in the military as well.
I appreciate that. Yeah. What an
So
adventure.
what did they teach you? What did they teach you that corresponds to what you're doing in the coaching and speaking? I'm curious. What did the military teach you?
Well, the reason I got into the military was to be a part of the rich tradition of military bands. I actually went to the military to play the trumpet. What I did not expect to gain from the military was, one, becoming a sergeant, which was pretty cool to be able to be promoted to that rank. But secondly, I was not military material. Like, I could not run to save my life. I would save a lot of other lives, but it wouldn't be mine. Everyone ahead of me would win. But then also there were a lot of things that I had self-limiting beliefs when I went into the military. I didn't think I was strong enough to accomplish a lot of things. And I don't know if you can hear my voice cracking, but I'm like fighting it back a little bit. I've been giving a presentation lately about a deployment I was on in the middle of Iraq. Like I had not expected to go to the middle of Iraq to be part of, the Iraq war in the early 2000s. And certainly my mom, she was sending me off to the Army to play trumpet also. She was hoping to see me in concert and performing with different groups. And, our wartime mission is a little different than anyone expected. And we certainly didn't expect to go to war. So when I found myself in the middle of the desert doing all these physical labor tasks, being on guard duty, interacting with a foreign population, all of these skills I did not possess. But by the time that deployment was over, by the time I finished my military service, I discovered strength within me that I would have not discovered otherwise. Like, I cannot believe how much strength I was given, that resilience. Not all of it came easily, and some of it was a little bit forced on me. And, I would never take it back. my military experience has been such a gift to me and in such an amazing way. And yeah, I absolutely bring that into the programming that I do because it was a very impactful part of my life.
Wow. Well, I'm looking at the time. I can't believe it. Did time go by fast? We've been on this for 25 minutes. We have 5 minutes left. If someone wanted to get a hold of you, they just, you're a nice person. You're very gifted. You're doing great things for the community. Could they jump on a call with you, like a discovery call, to find out maybe if this is a right fit either for their organization or for them individually? Could you do that? Do you do that?
I do. I have a 15-minute coffee chat, a virtual coffee that I have. You can get there on my website, the orchestratedperformance.com. There's a menu button. Even if you go to the 52weekstothrive.com, which is that free to your listeners, a way to improve your life in a year. Either one of those have a place to contact me and get in touch for that consulting call. I like to do it on Zoom so I can see their face and they can see my face and realize I'm a real person.
Right. And I'm guessing it's just not hardcore sales. It's just connecting with people, seeing if you could be of service. Am I right?
Absolutely.
So here's the $1 million question that I always ask people when we get to this point. Usually, not always. I shouldn't say always. So we talked about vision, right? We talked about creating a vision. You're a young person. So, 50 years from now, 60 years from now, 100 years from now, what do you want to leave? And I think I know what the answer is, but I'd like to hear it from you. What do you want to leave as a legacy, your vision for life? Because I'm sure you've thought of this.
Absolutely. Yeah, I really want my legacy to be about seeing each person as a rich story. When you open a brand new book and you've never read it, and maybe you don't even know what it's about, but you saw the title, and the title says, right, mystery guy from Minnesota. But you read the book and you hear the story of this individual who's in front of you. And every single one of us has an amazing story. And I don't care how simple you think you are or how grand you think you are. Every person that you meet has an amazing story. And there's so much we can learn from each other. And I've learned that over the last 20 years. And I know I will continue to learn that every day to the day I die. And I hope that the legacy I leave behind is just that people can see each other as dignified humans with so much more potential than we sometimes give them credit for.
Yes, I would say 100%. When I discovered the hero's journey, I remember listening to this Joseph Campbell in the 70s when I was in high school. It didn't mean a lot to me because I was just getting started. But, a little bit of hard knocks and knocked down here and there, professionally and personally. I discovered, wait a minute, I literally could be living out of this hero's journey. And one of the things that begins the whole journey is the call to adventure. And once you take that call and go on that unknown journey like you did in Iraq, and as you did in your speaking career, you just grow. And then the last part is giving back. So I really appreciate our time together. I appreciate the fact that you're doing this and you're giving back to families and corporations and individuals the gift that you have. In the last 30 seconds, is there anything that I didn't ask you that you wish I did?
I'm not sure there's anything else that you have not asked me. I feel like we covered a lot of ground in this last 30 minutes. I just really appreciate having the opportunity to speak to your listeners and get to know you a little bit better and share a little bit about my passion.
Yes, thank you so much. So reach out to Marcy, get her offer. If you want to do a one-on-one, do that as well. Marcy, thank you so much. Have a great weekend. We'll talk soon.
All right, thanks, Greg.
You've been listening to the Greg Dwyer Radio Show, brought to you by motivational speaker Greg Dwyer on buildingfortunesradio.com. Check out Greg at gregdwyer.com. Be sure to download his ebook at gregdwyerebook.com to stay focused on what matters most to you. That's www.gregdwyerebook.com. We want to thank you for listening. Now go make a difference in your world.